Good morning, everyone. If you can hear my voice, please do me a favor and in the chat, just introduce yourself so that we can get an idea of who's here and who's not. We do have an attendance list, so we're expecting about 9 people. We just require that you kind of, introduce yourself in the chat so that we can take attendance and then give you the flag on Key to Learn that you've taken this course. And we'll begin in about 2 minutes, and we're going to try to get through this hopefully within the hour. Hello, is there anybody out there? Oh my god, there's nobody in the chat. I don't even know if we should start with 5 people watching? You think? Alright, well, I will, how about you just watch the count of people, and I'm just gonna begin, because it's all recorded anyways. Alright, so, welcome everybody to the AirWatch webinar. I'm just gonna oh, there we go, we got one person. Hello, Liz. My name is Brandon, and I have with me in the same room a coworker, colleague, and dear friend of mine, Felipe, who will be fielding the chat for any questions that come up during the webinar. We're just going to cover AirWatch, and I'm hopefully try to get it done within the hour. More often than not, it usually does go over the hour because there is a lot of content to cover. So I just want to give you guys the fundamentals of what you need to know to get AirWatch working for you guys at your school. So let's kick this off. That is not what I pressed. There you go. Okay, so before we begin, I just want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So using the same link that you're on right now to watch this video or this live stream, it's going to be the exact same link. As soon as this is done, you can actually go back and watch it just like a regular YouTube video. Every time I'm saying something out of my mouth, and by the time you hear it, there's usually about a 10-second delay. So if you ask me a question in the chat and it sounds like I'm not responding to it right away, it is probably because that 10-second delay. So just give me a moment. And of course, if you do have a question, do feel free to ask it in the chat. However, if you have a question that requires a little bit more detail, I'm probably just going to park that question until the end of the webinar, just so that I can explain it in more detail, so that way, we cover all the content and people can go when they got to go. If it's a really quick question, Felipe to the left of me will probably answer it for you in the chat or link you to our knowledge base that covers that content. And if we look at the YouTube video player in the bottom right hand corner, there's some quality settings you can adjust by clicking the gear icon in the bottom right hand corner. By default, you probably leave it on auto. Auto will choose the best quality for your speed, but if you find that something's not clear on the screen, you can adjust it to 1080p or 720p, which is a higher quality. Also, sometimes what will happen is the video will fall behind in that you're not looking at the livest possible version. So on one hand, it's not the end of the world, but it will seem awkward if you're asking questions and I'm like way ahead of you. So what I would do is if you look at the volume control on the bottom of the video, you'll see to the right of the volume control there's a button that says live. You'll want to make sure that that live button is red so that you're on the quote-unquote livest version possible. Alright, so AirWatch, what is it? Well, AirWatch is a mobile device management system, and another fancy term is an enterprise mobility management system. The general idea is that we have this centralized portal where all of our mobile devices will be communicating with. It's sort of like the central brain hub of our devices. So we can make all of our policies and configurations and different apps we want to push out. It all comes from AirWatch. We push it outward from AirWatch to the devices. So all of our iPads will be communicating with AirWatch to receive their apps and configurations. And the reason that we have AirWatch is for the benefits that I've highlighted here. The first one is that the automatic configuration and connection to the TDSB wireless network. So prior to AirWatch, you had to join TDSB-Wi-Fi, or at the time I believe was TDSB-Staff, which means that if you wanted to join the Wi-Fi on a classroom-based iPad, you had to enter in like your employee number and password, or a student number and password, and that was how you authenticated to the Wi-Fi. Obviously, that's not good because passwords expire, accounts change, and also it's like, hey, am I held accountable for everything that happens on this iPad going forward? So what we've done is we now have it so that it connects to our production wireless, which is the WLAN TDSB01, and it does so with a certificate on the iPad. So you don't have to worry about usernames and passwords. You just connect to the WLAN TDSB01. There's also easy apps installation for multiple iPads, so we can basically choose how we can take a bundle of apps or one or two apps and push them out from AirWatch to all the iPads. It's all done wirelessly, so it's all done with a wireless connection. You don't have to hook it up to computer, nothing like that. And also you don't need the Apple ID. So traditionally what you would do if you wanted an app prior to AirWatch is you'd go into the App Store, you would find your app that you wanted, you'd try to download it, it would ask you to sign in with an Apple ID, and then it would proceed to download. Now that's fine on one or two iPads, but when you have 100, it could be a little bit cumbersome. So with AirWatch, it doesn't work that way. We basically push it out from AirWatch. It'll deploy the app to your iPads without the need of an Apple ID, and it does so wirelessly. Another benefit is the built-in security policies, which I'm going to explain in a few moments, which basically sort of kind of prevents the iPad from being tampered with as far as from students go, and then you have the ability as a teacher to turn off those restrictions, which I'll show you in more detail. And the last benefit is you also have like an inventory of your iPad, so you'll actually have a list that you can export even to like Excel of all your iPads and what hardware they're running, what version they're running, etc. So who can log into AirWatch? By default, principals can log into AirWatch. If you're a principal at your school, you can right away log into AirWatch, and then your principal can then delegate what we call AirWatch administrators. So if you're here, there's a good chance it's because you're an AirWatch administrator. We contacted your principal. We asked them to choose an AirWatch administrator. They probably chose you, and then we assisted them in adding you in through LAS. So if at any point they want someone else to kind of take over the AirWatch responsibility, they can always add another person in through LAS. You can have multiple people in as an AirWatch administrator, so and that's all controlled through LAS. We have documentation on how to do that, but for now, it's not really that important. But once you are added into LAS as an AirWatch administrator, it does take 12 to 24 hours for you to actually be able to log into the AirWatch console. So what this demo is going to cover is we're going to cover what the iPads look like now as an AirWatch iPad, so the new look and feel and how they behave and stuff like that. We're also then going to switch over to navigating to the AirWatch web console, which is where the actual work is done. So we'll make all of our configurations in the AirWatch web console. And then we're going to show you in that AirWatch web console how to organize your iPads in a group. So for example, you might say that a handful, 5 iPads belong to grade 1s, 5 iPads belong to grade 2s, grade 3s, grade 4, etc. So kind of giving them like a purpose, and then being able to apply apps based on their purpose. And then from there, we're going to show you, obviously now that they're grouped, how to add and remove apps and the web clips to those iPads. So I hope that makes sense. But basically what we do is we take our iPads, we logically group them. These iPads belong to grade 1s, 2, 3, whatever. So once they're in those groups, then we apply apps to those groups. So we could say, these 3 apps belong to grade 1, these 3 apps belong to grade 2, etc. So we're going to just jump right over to the device side of things. So before we actually show you the web console, we're just going to show you what an iPad looks like now. And the AirWatch iPads, how they look, I have one here up on the screen. Basically how they look is they should all have the TDSB 20th anniversary logo at the lock screen. So you can see here it's got the TDSB logo. I wish it wouldn't time out so quickly. It's got the TDSB logo here on the lock screen and the blue background. And also in very small lettering, let me see if I can turn that on. It never shows up. I don't know why this thing doesn't focus so well, but Okay, right under where it says press home to open is the iPad serial number and the iPad name in very small writing. So that'll actually help you if you need to call us for help and you want to. We usually ask for the serial number for an iPad just so that we know which iPad you're referring to. And that serial number is now available at the bottom of the lock screen if your iPad is in AirWatch. So that should be helpful for you guys to read it out to us. But once we unlock the iPad, this is what it looks like as of now. So all the AirWatch iPads or TDSB iPads that are enrolled in AirWatch should all have the same blue background. And one of the things you may notice is that there is no App Store, and the reason for that is that we're not using the App Store to push out apps anymore. You can't put the app on it this way. So there's no App Store. And there's also a lot of settings that are actually gone. You can't sign in for into an iCloud account up here where you usually could. You can't change the background. You can't sign in with an iTunes account. You can't. You can add an Apple Pay card. That's interesting. You can't add an email profile. There's a lot of things you can't do. There's a lot of restrictions. And the reason for that is that we're assuming will be classroom-based iPads. So what we can do is if for whatever reason you need to get rid of these restrictions. So when a student's using this, you obviously wouldn't want them to download any app they want from the App Store. You also wouldn't want the student to come into settings and put a passcode on the device so that and then not have them tell you what the passcode is, effectively locking you out. So that's why these restrictions are in place. And if at any moment you as a teacher wish to circumvent those restrictions, we can do so. We put that in as an option. So right now we'll consider this iPad as in being in like student mode, in that I can't download any apps. I can't even actually remove apps. So usually you can tap and hold on the apps and they all start wiggling like that. And then you would usually see like a little X in the top right hand corner. You can see there's no X here. So I can't remove apps, I can't add them, and I can't do a lot of things in the settings. But you as a teacher can. And how we do that is we switch from, we'll say, student mode over to teacher mode. And how we do that is using the agent app. So all the AirWatch iPads should have two things that relate to AirWatch, is the agent and the catalog. So I put them down here. Actually, let me see if I can put that back. There we go. Okay, so the agent and the catalog. The agent is that icon with the blue shield, and the catalog, I don't know, it's a downward arrow, but that the catalog is another AirWatch app, which I will get into later. But what we're going to focus on now is the agent, this blue shield. This is the app that tells this iPad to speak to AirWatch. It is the brains of the device communicating with AirWatch. And what we're going to do is we're going to launch the agent app, and it's all, there we go. This is what you're going to see. You should see a page to sign in. So it should prompt you for a username and password. Any TDSB staff member can put in their employee number and password into this app, and what it will do is unlock all the restrictions on the iPad. So I'm going to actually demonstrate that now. So let me put in my employee number, and I'm going to pull this aside and put in my password. Okay. So I got my employee number and password there. Now you can put in your employee number and password there too. Anyone can. Any TDSB staff member. The caretaker can put in their employee number and password here, and it will unlock the iPad. Students, however, cannot put their student number and password here, and it will unlock it. That would be silly. So it's basically any TDSB staff member can put in their employee number and password into the AirWatch Agent app, then tap Login. And what will happen is once this is done loading, once we're on the screen that shows us all the information about this device, we'll know that the iPad is unlocked. So we got the success message, so it liked our username and password. It's going to say loading, and then eventually we're just going to see kind of a screen that just says some information about the iPad. It's really not the point of being here, is to see this information, but just the act of actually logging into this app is what turned off the restrictions. So now if I press the home button, what I should see is there it is. There's the App Store, right? So now I've unlocked all the restrictions. Hi, Kimberly. So I've unlocked all the restrictions on this app, and I can now actually launch the App Store, for example. Yeah, if you see the notification, the prompt for allowing notifications, just tap yes. You actually, the first time when you log in the agent, you might see like actually a few different notifications. It'll say something about like allowing book assignment. Click allow. I would say allow for most things. It might even ask you for location. If it asks for location, you can turn that on as well too. That'll actually help you later on if you want to track the iPad down. But yeah, so I've signed in the agent app, and now the App Store is available. Before, when I would tap and hold the apps, they wouldn't have, see how there's a little X in the top left-hand corner? Now I can actually remove them. So those apps are now removable. I'm fading away. Hello? It shouldn't be fading away. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm assuming that everyone can hear me. Let me see if I can turn this up. I don't want to blast their ears off. That should probably be better. Okay, well hopefully, if anyone else is not hearing me, please let me know in the comments so I can troubleshoot that. So yeah, as I said, now that I've signed in the AirWatch agent, if I tap and hold the app, now they'll start wiggling, but I now have the option of the X. Oh, perfect. Cool. So maybe it was too quiet. Maybe I'll turn up even more. There we go. So now once they're all wiggling, you can actually tap the little X on them and it'll remove the app. Whereas before I didn't have that option. And also on top of that, so now I have the App Store available. Now I can remove apps manually. I can also go into settings, and literally every setting that I would have available to me if I bought this iPad from like the Apple Store is now available. I can sign in with an iCloud account. I can put on a passcode on the device. Change the wallpaper. Everything's unlocked. This iPad is now no different than any iPad that you would pick up from the Apple Store. So that's how we remove the restrictions. And the reason for this is, I mean, the idea of AirWatch is that you would push out the apps from AirWatch. But let's say tomorrow you have an emergency, I don't know, meeting, and you have to try out this new app or whatever. You need an app on there quick, and you don't have time to submit the app request form, which I'll show you. You don't have time to talk to your AirWatch administrator, which is you, and ask them to deploy the app, and you need it on there now. This is what you can do. You would basically sign in the AirWatch agent, App Store becomes available, and then once the App Store is available, you can go in here, find the app that you're looking for. I don't know, let's say this one, Golf Zero. If I hit get, it will ask me for an Apple ID though. So your school should still have your Apple ID available to you to use. So generally the Apple ID format was number, which would be your 4-digit trillium number, dash mobile G. So for my fake school, it's 9991 dash mobile G at tdsb.on.ca. So for you, it would be the four numbers of your school's trillium number dash mobile G at tdsb.on.ca. I don't want to get too much in the Apple ID because we actually want to get away from the Apple IDs, but that is an option. And of course, if you don't remember your school's Apple ID, you can even use like a personal Apple ID. I wouldn't recommend it, but you know, I'm speaking emergency cases here where you need to get an app on an iPad quickly. That would be one thing that you can do. Now that I've unlocked all the restrictions, I can actually do whatever I want to this iPad. However, before I give it back to a student, I want to make sure that I sign out so that they don't have the same power that I have. And it's sort of the reverse process. I just go back into the agent app, and then I click this little logout button here. And when I tap logout, it's going to ask me if I'm sure. I'm going to click yes. And once I'm back at the login screen for the AirWatch agent, I'll know that the restrictions are all turned back off again. If you forget to log out, it's not a big deal because I believe after 8 hours, I mean, 8? Yeah, 8 hours. It's a long time, but after 8 hours, it will automatically sign you out. And now when I press the home button, as you can see, the App Store is gone again. I now can no longer remove apps anymore, and the settings have been dwindled down to only a handful again. So that's one important piece I wanted to show you about the AirWatch iPads, is that ability to check in and check out. So you check into that AirWatch agent app using your employee number and password. It becomes a full-featured iPad ready for you to do whatever you want to it. When you're ready to hand it back to a student, just make sure you sign out, and then it'll lock it down again. So that was the device side of things. I kind of neglected the catalog, but for good reason. I'll show you later where that comes into play. volume. Can you just unmute? I just want to hear what I sound like on your speakers. I don't know if you have speakers there. Check, chickadee, check, 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 check out, check, check. I can't hear it. Can you unmute? I hear nothing. Turn that on? Okay. Oh, so it's just a little bit quiet. I don't know what to tell you. I can increase the volume on the mic here, but might get a little bit distorted. I'll just try speaking louder. Let's try that. Okay, so carrying on, that was the agent, and I'm going to talk about the catalog later. You can mute that now. That's super annoying. Okay, so moving along here. Now we're going to talk about the actual web console. So that was the device side of things for now. We're going to come back and look at the iPads a few more times. But now we're going to go back into the AirWatch web console, and this is where the actual configuration of magic happens. A few things about it. You can log in anywhere on the web. You don't have to be within the TDSB. You can use whatever browser you want. It could be Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, whatever. I did include a username format there that I'm going to explain in more detail. And actually, you know what? I'll just jump right into the demonstration of this because it just makes more sense. Let me close out of my presentation here and here. Okay, so most standard TDSB desktops will look similar to this, except there's a background, which you can't see, but it's on my other screen. But there would be the 20th anniversary logo here. But what we have is in your school shared folder, on your desktop, you'll have a folder that has the name of your school. And inside that folder, we'll have a link to AirWatch. So if you look at your school shared folder on the desktop, you should see that an AirWatch shortcut has been placed in that school shared folder. So this would be like the same place where you get Markbook and whatnot, but they should see AirWatch in there. So if I launch AirWatch from here, it'll take me to the address. It's kind of a handful to remember. It's basically cn239.awmdm.com. So that's why I recommend using the shortcut. You don't have to memorize that long URL. One thing I want to talk about here is before we log in is the username format. You would assume, like most applications, you would just type in your employee number and then your password. But in actuality with AirWatch, we have to type in an annoying little prefix. Let me just zoom in here. Okay. So in the username format, I would usually use my employee number and password, but in this case, I actually have to type in TDSB / and then my employee number. So TDSB / and then my employee number. Not to confuse the / with the /, so that's the /. This is the /, right? So the / is the key directly to the left of the shift key. We don't want that one. We want the one directly above the enter key. That is the /. So TDSB / employee number. Now, you don't have to necessarily type in TDSB in all capitals. It can be lowercase. It can be like this. It doesn't matter as long as it's TDSB / and then your employee number. And then you just type in your current network password. Okay. So I have my current network password filled in there, and now I'm going to zoom back out because I think I made that / nonsense abundantly clear. So now TDSB / employee number, and then my current network password, and then we click login. Now, it's usually at this point during the webinar where we hear some people can't log in. I'm hoping that we did our due diligence and had you guys all added as AirWatch administrators. If you're not an AirWatch administrator, please let us know. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get you access now. It'd be too late in the webinar, but we'll definitely, you can follow along with us, and then we can get you added in as soon as this webinar is done. But generally speaking, before we invite you guys to the webinar, we reach out to your principal, give them instructions on how to add you guys in, and even most often than not, guide them through adding you guys in. So I'm hoping you guys all have access to AirWatch. And what you should see after you sign in is you probably won't see this dashboard because you might see the terms of agreement. So you might get this long prompt about accepting the terms of agreement. I would just click accept or allow or whatever it says there. And then the next thing it might ask you to do is create a 4-digit PIN code if it's the first time you're signing on. And we create this 4-digit PIN code only for one circumstance, and that is if you want to wipe an iPad from AirWatch. So you can imagine if I have an iPad that I want to restore back to its factory settings, as in wipe it clean and then start over. If you do that operation in AirWatch, it actually makes you type in this 4-digit PIN code to make sure that that's what you want to do. It's sort of like a verification check. Like, are you sure you want to wipe this iPad? If so, type in the 4-digit PIN code. So whatever the 4-digit PIN code you set there is, it's not important. You can set it to 1, 2, 3, 4. You probably won't be using it that often unless you're wiping iPads often from the AirWatch console. So it's not a problem to, just sort of set it to something simple that you'll remember. And of course, if you don't remember, resetting it is actually not very hard at all. We have a document on that, but it's basically you come up here, go to Manage Account Settings, and then there's a Reset button. There's no limit to the amount of administrators at your school, and neither Haresh or Liz can log in. Or they have, what's that? Okay, so I'm going to have Felipe take a look at that. He's going to go take a look at your accounts, make sure you guys have access. And if you don't, then unfortunately you're just going to have to follow along. But if you do have access, it's probably that TDSB / nonsense that I was talking about. So once you have logged in, accept the terms of agreement, and created your 4-digit passcode, what you should see here is this dashboard. And this dashboard is basically just a graphical, higher-level overview of your environment. In this case, it says here I have 6 devices here. 6 devices, and it kind of breaks down into more interesting charts like, how many of them don't have a passcode, when were the devices last seen. All these charts are interactive. You can click them and it will take you to what it's referring to. So for example, it says here I have 5 iPads, or 6 iPads, sorry. If I click that, it's going to take me over to those 6 iPads it's referring to. Not a lot of time to spend here. It's just basically just bunch of pretty little charts. So, but what we do want to do is on the left-hand side, I kind of want to focus your attention to the 3 different main controls here. So there's devices, which you can imagine will contain all the operations surrounding individual devices. Then below devices is apps and books. That is where all of our apps and books will be. And then below that is groups and settings. And groups and settings are where we're going to create the groups. So we're going to organize our iPads into these groups. And then put our iPads in those groups and then apply apps to them. So we're going to start from the top here with devices. We just saw the dashboard. So once we have our mouse over here, you'll see that there's like a sub menu. So devices and then dashboard. We can then toggle over to list view. So the devices list view is basically going to show us a list of our devices. So let me just toggle that now. And as we can see, we have a list of our iPads here. This screen will just show some general information, such as what version of iOS is it running, which is the software that the Apple iPads run. See here it says 11.3. What the hardware is, so like an iPad 5th generation. You can see it's got 32 gigabytes of space. And also the last seen value. So this green box here basically says that this device was last seen in 1 minute. The 1M stands for 1 minute. And what that means is basically the last time this iPad was connected to the network and talking to AirWatch. So a minute ago, this iPad said hello to AirWatch. So, as far as AirWatch is concerned, it's alive at least a minute ago. And as you go down, you can see that it's sorted, this one's 34 minutes ago, 37 minutes ago, 55 minutes ago, and 97 days. So that last seen value could actually give you a good indication if something's wrong with your iPad. If you look at this chart and you see that you have an iPad that hasn't been talking to AirWatch in like 97 days, for example, there's probably something wrong with it. Either it's not connected to the network, or there's some sort of software disconnect between AirWatch and that iPad. And what I would do really with AirWatch, what's great about AirWatch is that once you have your AirWatch environment set up, you can make your iPads actually become more volatile. In that, I know that, for example, if this iPad, if I need to wipe it and bring it back to life, the second it comes back into AirWatch, it should know it's a grade 2 iPad and it requires all these apps. So it makes those iPads more volatile in that it doesn't matter what happens with them as far as wiping them goes. So that was the last seen value there. But one thing I also want to show, so if you have Android devices too, Android devices admittedly don't play very well with AirWatch yet. I don't know why the Samsung tablets have been a little bit of a pain with AirWatch, but we are going to eventually be migrating more mobile devices into AirWatch. So hopefully we get some new tablets in the price book, or our administrators of AirWatch figure out how to get it to play better with AirWatch. But your Android tablets will show in there if you guys have some Samsung Galaxy tablets. I'm not going to be covering Android today just because there's about 35,000 iPads and growing, whereas with Android there's like a few thousand, just because they haven't been as promising or as reliable as the iPads. Now, not to narc on Android, I'm an Android guy myself. I love the Android operating system, but it's for some reason, with the way that the administrators of AirWatch have it set up, the configurations just aren't great. So I guess they don't have access, eh? Well, that sucks. Okay. So yeah, Liz and Haresh, it looks like you guys don't have access to AirWatch, unfortunately, but hopefully you can follow along. There's basically the instructional document there where basically your principal has to add you in through LAS. It doesn't take very long. So a few clicks, but even if they added you right now at this very moment, it takes 12 to 24 hours for that access to kick in. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to follow along, or if you want, this video is being recorded, so you can actually just come back and watch it if you want, or skip through the stuff you don't need. Okay. At any rate, so that was so we got the last seen value here. Again, it shows you when they last checked in. You got some hardware information here. But actually, what I want to talk about is this middle field here, where it says the hell of names. You can see that grade 4 iPad number 8, grade 4 iPad number 7, iPad, and then a bunch of gobbledygook. This is actually a very crucial part of managing AirWatch. So what I would recommend is you always rename your iPads. And actually, I don't even just recommend it. I think it's one thing you have to do. So first off, you would, in the real world, actually have a way to manage your iPads physically. So you can imagine if you guys have like 50 iPads at your school, I would suggest that you label them uniquely. I mean, how you choose to label them is up to you. Some schools, for example, have the iPad bumpers, so they're like a little case that kind of goes around it. And they'll have like 10 with a green bumper, and 10 with a blue bumper, and 10 with a red bumper, for example. So what they'll do is that they'll label the iPads, 1 through 10, with like an actual piece of masking tape on the back or like a sticker, and then they'll have the bumper on top of it. So then when they come into AirWatch, they can then rename their iPads so that it matches up with what they have in the real world. So for example, this long one here, actually, let me rename this guy, the one that I have next to me. Grade 2 iPad number 8. Okay, so if I want to rename an iPad, I click this little pencil icon right here next to the iPad that I want to rename, and then I can choose the name that I want to give it here. So let's pretend that this iPad has a red bumper on it. Not red bumper. I'm just going to call it red iPad number, and let's say I have a label on it that's 6. So this iPad, I'm going to rename it red iPad number 6, so that when I'm looking at my list, I know what iPad that is in the real world. And then I'm going to set the friendly name as the device name. And what this does is it takes this name that I've just created here, and it pushes it over to the iPad. So if I go into settings, general, and about, it will have the name. So I'll just show you really quick. I'm going to save this one here. And now I have red iPad number 6. And if I toggle back over to my iPad here, oops. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if I go into settings and then general, right here on the left hand side, and then about, I can see that the name has changed to red iPad number 6. So that's sort of what that checkbox does, to set the friendly name as the device name. So that red iPad number 6 is now the one that I have to the left of me. So what I would recommend that you do is you rename all your iPads based on their purpose. So first have an actual labeling system for them, and then go into AirWatch and actually rename them to a convention that works for you. I will say that there is a little bit, this is actually probably the hardest part of AirWatch right here, is this renaming process, because let's imagine that red iPad number 6 was just called iPad. So I just put in an AirWatch and it has a default name like iPad, which is probably what you may be looking at if you haven't renamed any of your iPads. You'll probably see a giant list of iPads all named iPad, 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 right? None of them actually have any distinction. And now you're wondering, well, how do I know which iPad that I'm looking at in the list matches up with which one I have in the real world? What you could do is you can search the serial number in the top right hand corner. So let's imagine that red iPad number 6 was actually just called iPad. So let's actually make this real. So I'm going to call it just iPad. Save. So this is generally what it looks like in AirWatch. In fact, let's rename all of them that. I just really want to sell the point home here. That's why I'm doing this. So just bear with me 1 second. Because this is the most important part, and this will determine how, going forward, how much easier your life will be when it comes to managing iPads and when it comes to like deploying apps to your iPads, and just being a little bit more granular with how they're all grouped. Okay, that's good. I think that's a good example. All right, so imagine. Look at this. So now I have iPad, 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 iPad. Yet I have, I actually have 3 iPads with me. I got this one, I got one underneath it, and then I got another one over here. How do I know which iPad this one is on that screen? So if I'm looking at a list of my iPads, how do I know this one that I have in my hand here is which one it is on this list? Well, how we do that is we actually have to search it by serial number. So only a few versions ago, what you were able to do before is actually rename the iPad on the iPad itself. So you would go on the iPad, go to settings, general and about, and change the name there, and then AirWatch would actually pick it up, and then that would be the new name of the iPad in the system. And it was so much easier because you could do it from the device, and then AirWatch would find out what it is from the device side. More recently, we've confirmed with AirWatch that is no longer the case. I don't know why. I think it's silly. It makes our lives a lot harder. But that is what the scenario is. So what we do here is we have our iPad, and we want to find out which one it is in the list. So I go to Settings, General, About, and then About here has got this list. You can see here there's a serial number in very small writing there. Unfortunately, we got to do a serial number lookup. So what I'm going to do is so now I know the serial number of this iPad. I go back over to AirWatch, and I type that serial number in up here in the search list field. So in this case, it's GCHVJEQ4HLF9. So that's the serial number of the iPad that I have to the left of me. I'm searching it up here. And what it should do is take this list here and show me that iPad. And there it is. So now I know for a fact that this iPad that I'm looking at here on the screen is the one that I have to the left of me because the serial number matches up. And now that I know that, I can rename it appropriately. So we'll go back to calling it whatever it was. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to call it Red iPad number 6. I'm going to set the friendly name as the device name so that it shows that on the device itself. And now I have one of my iPads named. Yeah, you can type in the last 4. I think the last 4 digits are actually unique to the iPad. I'm not sure. I think if there's some conflicts there. I think I've seen them where they have the last 4 are not unique. But that is, yeah, you don't necessarily need to type in the whole thing. In fact, if I take the last 4 here, which are 4HLF9, it should show me the same information. So I could take out that part there. So I only have the last 4 of the serial number there. And then it shows me that iPad 2. And yeah, that's another way of doing it. So you don't necessarily have to go to Settings, General, and About. Like I said at the beginning, is that it's also on the lock screen. So if I'm looking here, rather than going to Settings, General, and About, you can also just toggle down here on the lock screen, and you'll see, and I can't really show it here because it gets blurry, but the serial number is there at the lock screen in very small writing down here at the bottom. So those are the 2 ways you can get the serial number and then correlate it to your list in AirWatch. So once you're here and you have it named, that's great. We can actually now see that I have the iPad name, which will make my life a lot easier. Obviously, this initial part is going to be gruesome. Right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I only have 5 in this case, but for you guys, if you have a lot more, it can be a pain. But once you do get that initial setup, it'll make your lives a lot easier. And I'll show you why now. Oh, actually, sorry. Before I go into grouping them, I just want to show you some quick things. So you can actually click the iPad itself, and then it will take you to a section that has more details on the iPad. So I don't want to spend too much time here. I would recommend you just try it out yourself, and you'll see all the information that's available here. It just shows you a lot of the same information from the previous screen and more. In this case, you know, when was it last seen, how many apps are installed. So in this case, 11 out of the 14 apps are installed. Sorry, I just sneezed. 11 out of the 14 apps are installed. So I've basically told this iPad to have 14 apps installed, and out of those 14, it has 11. Sorry, 10 out of 11 because it's an auto app. That's what we're dealing with. And then on-demand apps, which I'll explain in detail. But anyways, so you can see the kind of apps are installed. There's the phone number, but it's not an iPhone, so that's fine. The power status, how much battery's there, storage capacity, etc. Right? We can actually also go up here to the top where there's more actions, and then there's a lot of information here. All the query stuff, don't worry about that. This is basically just tells the device to come talk to AirWatch and report back, you know, device information, security, profiles, yada, yada, yada. If there was a passcode on the device, you could clear it from here. We cannot put them on the device, so don't worry about that. I mean, you technically can't put it on the device, but you have to sign into the AirWatch agent, turn on passcode, and then if you forgot it, you could clear it. That would be the one circumstance there. Then there's rebooting the device. You can restart the device. You can wipe the device. So this is what I mentioned earlier. This is probably the one operation that I think is most important here. Is if I want to wipe this device, let's say it's being really buggy, I can do device wipe from AirWatch. So I can click this, and then it will ask me for that 4-digit PIN code that it told me to create at the beginning. So I could enter it in. I typed in it wrong intentionally, but you get the idea. I would type it in correctly, and then it would wipe the device. Also from here, you can go to the tab that says Apps, and it'll show you all the different apps that we've chosen to deploy and their status. In this case, the ones that are green are installed on the iPad. The one that is red is failed. So I could go and then troubleshoot why that is. And then there's also another one here where it's you know, not installed. So something's supposed to be installed, but it's not installed yet. So that shows you all the different status flags of the apps. But this isn't where we deploy the apps. This is just, again, we're just looking at one single iPad and just details about the iPad. So we went from the list view over here to the details view by clicking iPad. So if I click that iPad, it takes me to details view. So that's all I just want to show you. Again, I would actually just poke around here because again, there's not too much. I don't want to cover too much here because it's not really that important. But there are operations here that you may find useful or useful for you. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go from devices here. We're going to go past apps and books into groups and settings. Because before we deploy apps, we want to have our iPads grouped. So we take our iPads, we rename them, then we group them, and then we push apps to them. So we already have them named, or we have one named at least, and then we're going to go into groups. So if I click groups and settings, I'm going to then go to groups here, and then assignment groups. Don't worry about organization groups, just assignment groups. In assignment groups, there are going to be a bunch of apps or groups that I've created before. You can see that they all have a nice, neat little purpose. Grades 1 through 6. I got JK, library, robotics, and test iPad. So what you should see here is if you've never been in here and you've never created a group, is that we've already created some for you. You should all have two groups called iPads All and Android All. What those groups are, these groups we created them, which basically will by default contain all your iPads. So if, for example, you want to push an app to all your iPads, then you don't need to worry about creating a group because we already have that group created for you. So you can just go to your apps and books and then deploy the app to the iPads All group, and all your iPads will get that app. Same thing with Android devices. Now that works if you're fine with that. And some schools they're fine with just saying, you know what, we're gonna have all these apps on all of our iPads. That works. It's easier to manage. You don't have to do any of this grouping. You probably don't even need to rename them if you're just going to do that. But it's not robust in that there are some caveats to that. One is you can have a bunch of iPads that have apps on it that do not pertain to the person who's using them or the student that's using them. The second is that these iPads, depending on how old they are, they have a storage limitation. So older iPads may only allow 16 gigabytes, for example, of space, and every app that you deploy takes up space. So you could actually end up filling up some of your older iPads, such that they actually become unusable because you've put too many apps on them. So that's one thing to just be aware of. But what I'm going to show you is we're going to create our own group. So these are all the ones that I have here now. But we're going to create a brand new one using this button at the top where it says Add Smart Group. I click Add Smart Group, and this is the first screen that it takes me to. So when we're on this Create Smart Group screen, there's going to be two types of groups that we can create. There's one based on criteria and one based on devices or users. You generally will not use criteria. In fact, I say the first thing you do when you come in here is switch over to select devices or users. So you can see here there's types. Select criteria and devices and users. Criteria, devices, and users. So criteria, in a nutshell, basically means that this group is going to contain iPads based on criteria. So rather than me choosing which iPads I want in this group, it's going to go based on parameters about the iPad. So for example, if I created a group that I can create a group that says give me all the iPads. So this group will contain any Apple iOS, which is an iPad. Click. Come on. There we go. So any Apple iOS device that is running version 10.3.3 or greater than. Yeah, so we'll say this group will contain every iPad that is running Apple iOS version 10.3.3. And what that does is that's going to give me the list of devices that meet that criteria. So if I look on the right here, it found 2 iPads. So I have 6 iPads in total, and 2 of them are running version 10.3.3 and higher. So this group is dynamic. It can change. It's probably not what you want to do. I just wanted to show you this for the sake of example, because what happens is a lot of times people come into this Create Smart Group screen and they forget to toggle over here and they wonder how to create the group. So this is select criteria. We don't want this sort of dynamic changing list. We're going to go to select devices or users. It's going to say, hey, if you switch, you're going to lose all your changes. That's totally fine. I didn't do any changes and I don't care about it, so okay. So now we're on select devices or users. So now in this type, we can actually choose manually from a list. So as you can see, there's my, oh wait, no, that's not that. There's the red iPad. So there it is, red iPad number 2. So I'm actually going to give this, I'm going to give this a name first. So the name of the group here is going to be red iPads. So this would imagine these are all the iPads that have the red bumper on it, right? So this group is going to be called red iPads, and it's going to contain all my red iPads. Now, this is why renaming the device is important, is now that I'm ready to create my group, if I put my cursor in here, it's going to show me all the devices, but as you can see, 4 of them just say iPad, 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 iPad. If I hadn't renamed it to red, I would have no idea which iPad actually belongs in here, because that's just the generic name, iPad. But because I did rename it, I now know that this red iPad probably belongs in the red iPad group. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to click Add, and it's going to move over to the right-hand side here. So I've just added one in. And you would just keep doing that. So I would choose another one, add. Choose another one, add. And they just keep moving over like that, right? And then once I've built out my list, then I can save it, and now I have them grouped. I can also remove them too. So let's just, let's say I put one in accidentally and I don't want it. If I uncheck this box here, it takes it out of the list. So in this case, I'm going to create this group called red iPads. I have my one red iPad in there, and I added another one there just for example, and I'm going to click save. So now if I look at my groups, I have all my grades, and then I have my red iPads group here. Now let's say down the road tomorrow I get 3 new iPads and they all have the red bumper as well, and I'm going to add them to the red bumper group. I come back here into groups and settings. I find my red iPads group. I can click the name itself, and it'll bring up that screen again, and then I can just add them in. So then you can imagine there would now be 4 more here, and I could add them in, or vice versa. I can take them out. If I now no longer want this one in here and this one in here, then I can uncheck them and then save. So you can go back, you can create your list, and you can go back and add and remove. You can control that list. You can go back and edit it. You can put more in, you can take some out. I hope that makes sense. So those are the 2 group types, right? You have your manual list, and you have your automatic based on criteria. Don't bother creating criteria groups. I highly don't recommend it. We have one already that you will probably use, and that is the iPads All group. So if we look at the iPads All group, it should contain all, if I go to device preview enabled here, it'll show me all the devices that are in this group. And as you look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 6. So all 6 of my iPads are in this iPads All group by default. So don't modify them. So we should label all the iPads before we group them. So like I said, you should first label them physically, so in the real world that they make sense. So you actually have a sticker on it, or you have some sort of thing that like you can flip it around on the back and you know which one it is, right? So for example, this iPad here, you know, in our department we have, you know, property of TDSB, school, and we have like a label for it. So you can imagine your school that instead of here, it would say like, you know, iPad 1, 2, or 3, or 4, right? So once you have it labeled there, then you can then now in AirWatch come in here and rename the iPad. So you come in devices, boom, list view. So then you rename it here so that it matches up with your physical label. So that iPad may be labeled number 5, and then I rename number 5 iPad in AirWatch. So now the AirWatch will basically reflect the real world. And then once I have it labeled and renamed in AirWatch, then I can go back into groups and have that nice robust control over what it's going to look like. So now I can group them based on that, right? And the reason for that is that, you know, you're probably going to distribute your iPads based on use, right? Like what grades they're going to and stuff like that. And it also helps you shift them around later on if you do need to reorganize how you share your iPads. You'll know at least, you know, hey, we're moving these 5 iPads from grade 1 to grade 2 because, you know, they have a new whatever, right? And then you could just move them over from that group. You can rename them in AirWatch from grade 1 to grade 2, and then move them from the grade 1 group to the grade 2 group. So that's why you want to have it match with the real world, right? It should be like a living list to some degree. So now that we got them grouped, let's push an app to it. So I got my groups here. I'm going to deploy an app to all of my red iPads. And how I'm going to do that is now we went to groups and settings. Now we're going to go to apps and books. So under apps and books, when we come here, the first thing we're going to see is this giant list of, in fact, just click apps and books and you don't need to go really much further than that. Once you click apps and books, this is the screen you're going to see. However, there's going to be a bunch of unknown entries, and these are basically, it's a board-wide view of the AirWatch apps. Not all, you can't work with any of these apps. In fact, these are probably requested by another school or deployed centrally. So what we do is if we want to see the apps that we can use, is we need to filter based on our school name. So in the top right-hand corner here is a little search box. So we're going to take this giant list of apps and filter the apps that we can use. And we do that by either searching by our 4-digit trillium number or by our school name. I have a fake school called Maple Grove, so I can type in Maple Grove. And what it should do is take that giant list of apps and show me all the ones that I can use. So these are my apps. These are the ones that I requested, and these are the ones that I can deploy with AirWatch. You can also search for the school's 4-digit trillion number. So instead of the school name, I can do 9999, which is my trillion number for Maple Grove. And it will show me all the Maple Grove apps. So for you, it would be the same thing. Just search your school name or search your school's 4-digit trillion number in the top right-hand corner, and you'll see which apps you can use. Now, I'm hoping you guys have an understanding of how these apps got here. Hopefully you do, but you probably don't. So I'm just going to briefly explain it. the deploying of apps isn't a real-time look of the App Store. Okay, so everything that you see here under apps and books, and then when you search your school name, isn't going to show you every single app in the App Store. It's not, it's not like you're browsing the App Store and choosing apps. All of our apps actually need to be not only vetted, but they need to go through our app admin department, where basically they put it in your environment. So first, what we would do is, let's say, for example, we have a need for a new app. We need to submit the app request form. Yeah, so if you guys are new to AirWatch, what they probably did is, so there was two ways that we deployed AirWatch. One is that we sent a team of techs to your school, or if your school didn't have that many iPads, let's say you only had 20, we encouraged you guys to do self-enrollment, where basically they would come on site, and then they would they wouldn't come on site. We would basically ask you guys to enroll your devices yourself. And basically how you enroll the devices, you wipe it, and then you type in the trillium number when it comes back to life. The enrollment piece should already be handled by either a tech, or hopefully you guys know what that is. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But so what they did, though, is they asked you guys, what apps do you want to see? And that was basically us submitting the app request form on your behalf. But going forward, if you guys have a new app, we need to submit the app request form. You asked how long does it take to see the apps that you requested. If the app is free, he said 1 to 2 days. I'm going to be honest, usually it gets done before the end of the day. So if, for example, if I requested an app right now using the app request form and the app request is free, our app admin department is very quick with this particular request, and you'll usually see them in your environment by the end of the day.
What's listed in the form?
Yeah. But the time frames are actually listed in the form. But however, if it's a paid app, the paid apps do take more time, because what happens is it has to go through teaching and learning. Because obviously we can't spend board funds on an app that has not been vetted, right? So if it's an inappropriate app, we're not going to spend taxpayers' dollars on the app. So it has to go through teaching and learning. They vet the app, they buy it based on discounts and a whole bunch of stuff. I've completed several app requests from several weeks ago, and no apps have shown up yet. I can't see, but will all the apps be on the list? We still have no apps weeks later. So again, I just want to be clear. So when I submit let me actually pull it up. Let me just pull it up real quick so this makes more sense. How do I get there? Good thing I created that. I gotta sign with my TDSB account. Okay, so here's where we're going to find the app request form. So it's basically on our knowledge base, and if you don't know how I got here, you can get here through Service IT. And if you don't know how to get to Service IT, you can do that through the shortcuts in the school shared folder. So from Service IT, we can take a look at our knowledge base by going to the client service desk up here and clicking the knowledge base here, which will take you to our Google site. So on here, we actually have a knowledge base record of the app request form. It's under mobile devices and AirWatch. Where's AirWatch? Oh, mobile device management AirWatch. Okay. So here's the app. Here's everything AirWatch. So everything you need regarding AirWatch, everything I'm covering today and more, is actually here. But what I want to show you is this app request form right here. So this article details how to submit the app request form. So basically what it is first you get to the app request form by clicking this link here. And this is what the app request form looks like. It basically asks you, like, what's your name, your email address, employee number, are you a teacher or a principal, is this for a school or a central department, and whether the app is paid, free, or both. If you choose paid, it can take a little bit of time. It will take 15 business days up to, I've heard. If it's free, it'll be done really quick. So you basically come through this form and you fill out which apps you want. So do you use AirWatch? You say yes, right? And down here at the bottom is where we actually type in the app. So let's say we wanted a new app. What they ask for is the app name and the app URL. And the app URL, the reason they ask for that is so that they can tell which app you want. So for example, let's say I want Angry Birds tomorrow. So first I submitted the app request form, or rather I'm looking at my AirWatch environment, and I realize I now have a need for Angry Birds, and I need Angry Birds on all my iPads. When I submit the app for Angry Birds, it says VPP app URL. The reason they ask for the app URL is because if we look at the App Store, we'll see that Angry Birds is a very popular name. So what they request in the instructions here, this is the instructions. It basically is going to walk through everything I'm doing right now. It says go to the app store or the volume purchase program store, search the app you want, in this case Angry Birds, and go grab the link for it. So if I want Angry Birds and I look here, well, geez, look at that. Angry Birds 2 Go Pop, you know? Okay, so I want Angry Birds Go, right? So I click Angry Birds Go, and now I take the link up here at the top, right click, copy, and then go back to my form, which is here, sorry, and now I paste it in here. So now when they get this form, there's no question which app I wanted. I asked for Angry Birds, but they're going to go, you meant Angry Birds Go because you copied the link. That's the whole purpose for asking for the URL. So once I have all, like I can build out this list basically infinitesimally until until I run out of space. I can fill out as many apps as I want. So if you don't see an app that's not in there already, fill out this form and it should be there if it's free within a few days. A day or two. If it's paid, it's going to ask you for your principal's approval as well as the cost center and general ledger for your school. Because if it's paid, they're going to pluck it out of your budget. It will take a lot more time if it's paid, but free apps, again, they're very quick. You fill out as many apps as you can possibly think of, and again, make sure they're pertaining to the curriculum or they're appropriate for students. So if you maybe curate a list from your staff. So send out an e-blast to all the teachers saying, hey, I'm going to submit the app request form. We're going to get a bunch of apps in. What apps do you guys want to see on your iPads? And have them, respond back. Hey, we need these ones. And then once you have your list, then you can submit this form in one go. Submits the form, it creates a ticket, and then once that ticket's in, they will process it within a day or two if it's all free, and then you'll see it in your environment. So that's how these apps got here. Is that I submitted this form, and then a few business days later, they show up here. So if you don't see apps here, it's probably because that form wasn't submitted, or perhaps you didn't search correctly up here in the top right-hand corner. Or one of the things that we see is, let's say, for example, you just got an email notification saying your app is ready to go. Let's say you get a notification saying your app is ready to go. What we do sometimes is if you come in here and you still don't see that new app, pressing Sync Assets forces AirWatch to go check for those new apps. So if you got a notification saying your app request form is complete and you come in here and you still don't see the app, press Sync Assets and it will force a recheck for your apps. If you still don't see it, then please let us know something's gone wrong. Do we pay for the app once or will we be charged for each iPad? So with paid licenses, you pay per license. So let me give you an example of an app that costs money. So let's see. This one's really expensive, but that's why I use it. Prolo Quo. This one? Prolo. There it is. Prolo Quo to go. This one costs, okay, so here's a good example of a very expensive app, but it's very good in explaining what the price breakdown. This app is $349 per license. So if I want this app and I request it, I don't pay $349 for all my iPads. I pay for $349 per iPad. And this one is $349 for 19 iPads. So if I'm buying 19 licenses of this app, it's 349 times 19. If I order more than 20, there's a different price model. You can see for more than 20, it's $179. So this is sort of the thing that teaching and learning is responsible for. Is let's say you're requesting Prolo Quo to go, and like 5 other schools are also requesting Prolo Quo to go. They're going to amalgamate that purchase into one order, so that we get that cheaper bundle. That cheaper price. But when it comes to paid apps, yeah, you have to pay per license, and we at the board are held accountable for every license that we use, both free and paid apps. So what you're going to see in just a moment when I go to deploy this app is that even our free apps, they're free, but there's still a license count. So let's say you want Google Drive. Google Drive is for free on the App Store. You would search it up, and you will see that it's free and you can download it. But with AirWatch, because we are a large organization, we have to use this volume purchase program. So even though Google Drive is free, we basically quote unquote buy 500 free licenses of Google Drive. So we still have a license count. We need to be accountable for how many licenses we use. So in the example even of a free app, the developer might say, well, yeah, it's free for like 20, but like I didn't know you guys were going to use 1,000 copies, right? So with government agencies, we always have to have an audit of the software that we use. And one of those things is paying for software, same thing. If we're paying per license, right? That's just how, unfortunately, it works. This was an excessive example. Prolo Quota Go, I'm not sure exactly what it is, to be honest, but it's very expensive. Most of them are usually like, 50 cents per license up to 20, something like that. So yeah, you would take whatever you need. So that, and again, that sort of goes hand in hand with that whole grouping thing. So if you are buying an app, right, you want to make sure that you're probably, if you're not going to use it on all your iPads, then, hey, you don't want to buy 500 copies of that iPad. You would buy it based on what you need. And then you already have your apps group, so you'll know that those iPads that need that app are already in a group that I can easily deploy it to. So let's wrap this up. I'm going to show you how to deploy the app. So I think I've covered the getting of the apps. We're kind of going over here. I'm very sorry, guys. This always happens. But what we're going to do is I'm going to tie this all up together with deploying the app, and then we'll call it a day. So now that I have all my apps here, I'm going to deploy it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one. What's not on here already? I don't have. I think I deployed all these. Oh, Google Sheets. Okay. So let's say I want to deploy Google Sheets. So I don't have Google Sheets on my iPad right now. Let me just toggle over my iPad and you can see this. So here's that. There's no Google Sheets here, right? And now I want all my red iPads to have Google Sheets. So we submitted the app request form. We came here. We said, I want Google Sheets. We got our app request URL here by doing Google Sheets. Okay, we found the app here. We copied the link. We went to the app request form. We pasted our link in here, and then we clicked submit. Right? It's obviously not going to submit, but that's the idea, is that we submit the app request form, then we got an email notification saying your app is now ready. We come back into AirWatch, and now Google Sheets has magically appeared. That's the scenario, okay? So that's how Google Sheets got here, and now we're ready to push it out to my iPads. Again, submitting the app request form doesn't mean that the app is going to push out to all your iPads. And that seems to be a lot of confusion for some people. So it's like, hey, I submitted the app request form. Why don't I see it on my iPads? Well, what we do is we give you the app that you can use to then control how you wish to deploy it. So now I'm, as an AirWatch administrator, am going to choose how this app is going to be dispersed. I can either say, go to all my iPads, or I can say, go to just these iPads, or whatever. It's up to me, right? If for whatever reason you don't want to do any of this stuff, you don't have to. You can say, hey, IT services, I want Google Sheets, but I also want you guys to put it on all my iPads. You can say that. We'll totally honor that request. We do that all the time. We can handle the deployment part of it, as long as you have a group. What we can't do, though, is if you say, hey, I want Google Sheets applied to all my grade 2 iPads, and then we go look at your device list and you don't have them renamed and they're not in groups, then we don't know what to do, right? Like that we can't honor that request. But if you just say, I want this app on all my iPads, easy, no problem. You can ask us to do that and we will do it for you. But the idea is that app request form is not going to push it out. It's going to put it here so that now I can deploy it. And that's what we're going to do now. So I have Google Sheets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click the actual app name. It's going to come up with a screen. It's going to say, here's the app. And then there's actually going to be some license information on the left-hand side. So as I said earlier, even though this app is free, we actually, quote unquote, bought 500 licenses. So we asked the App Store for 500 licenses of this free app. Because even though it's free, we still need to be accountable of how much we use a software, free or paid. So we click the app name, we go to save and assign, and this is where we're going to create our assignment rules. We can create multiple assignment rules in here, and each assignment rule is going to look like this. So I'm going to click this add assignment button. Right now there's nothing in here, as you can see. It doesn't quite fit nicely into the screen, probably because of the resolution of my monitor, but there's nothing in here. So we're going to click add assignment, and we're going to create an assignment. So in here, this is where the actual magic happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my mouse over Add Assignment. This box is going to appear, and it's going to ask me to select my smart group. So if I put my cursor in here, it's going to ask me to choose out of those groups what I want to deploy it to. Now, with Google Sheets, you can imagine that's a pretty popular app. I probably would want to deploy it to all my iPads. So that's something you can do, is that there's an iPads All group, like I said. So the iPads All group will push this app to all your iPads. But for the sake of example, because I created that red group, I'm going to use that. So I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to choose the red iPads. Where'd it go? Red iPads. Okay. So I'm selecting the red iPads group. So we're going to take Google Sheets and we're going to push it out to all my red bumper iPads. And I only have one in there right now. If we look here under this active column, you can see that it says 1. Oh, actually, I just realized this isn't fitting on the screen. So these are the headers over here that are supposed to be on top of these boxes. That's very weird. Hang on a second. Let me zoom out and refresh the page. That might be too zoomed out. Let's try that again. Google Sheets. Save and assign. I just zoomed out, so I think things will fit in the screen better, but now it's probably hard to see. So let me fix that. Okay, so let's do it on 75% zoom. Add assignment. And we click add assignment over here. And then, yeah, it's still, the columns don't line up. Okay, so these columns are supposed to be above these boxes here. That might just be, I need to clear my browser cache. Let's not worry about that. But just the idea here is that those columns are supposed to be above it. So let me go back to my red iPads here. So I've chosen my red iPads group. And what it says here is that there's one device in that group, because that's where that column is supposed to be. And allocated is how many licenses we're going to assign it. Now this device, this group contains one iPad. We need to give this group at least one license out of that 500. Okay, so we have 500 free licenses. We need to give one license to this group because there's one iPad that will be using it. So the idea here is that we always must give it the amount of devices that are in the group or more. So for example, there's one iPad in here. However, let's say instead of doing the red iPads group, I chose my iPads All group, which contains 6 iPads. Maple iPads All. Okay, so let's say I chose this group. Well, now it shows here there's 6 devices, right? So I need to give this group at least 6 or more. What we recommend is you just put way more, because you have 500 free licenses. It's not going to cost you any more money. It's free. So what we do is we'll say 20. So I have 6 iPads in this group, and I'm going to give it 20. So I'm shooting for the moon. And the reason I do that is that if tomorrow I get more iPads, I don't have to come back here and change these parameters. I can just leave it set like that. So let me just change this back to the red. Oops. So the red iPad has one iPad in there, but I'm going to still give it 20 licenses. So that if tomorrow I get, 19 more iPads, red iPads, I can just drop them in the red iPad group, and I don't have to come in here and change anything. I've already set this up. The license count is good. So I have 500 free licenses, and out of those 500 licenses, I'm saying that this assignment can take 20 of them. And then down here, it's 500 per school. So that usually they request 500, but if your school, for example, has 500 iPads, I think they just double that. They'll get like 1,000. So I think the number isn't really particularly important. The idea is that they shoot for a high amount of licenses in the idea that you will never exceed 500. But if you do, then no problem. They'll just adjust it. You can just say, hey, we ran out of licenses, and then we'll just go get more. Right? It's not a problem. So in this case, I had 500 licenses. I've now taken 20 of those licenses and allocated it to my red iPads group, and I have 480 left over. Of course, if I run out, I can get more. Then there's the assignment type. We're going to leave everything down here as its default setting, particularly this one, the assignment type, auto and on-demand, which I'm going to explain just after this one. But first, we're going to leave it as auto. And what that means is the assignment type, auto and on-demand. Auto means that it's going to push this app right away. It's not going to wait. It's going to try to do it automatically, meaning it's not, there's no intervention required. The idea is that it's going to try to start pushing this app right away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Save. It's going to show me the assignment rule that I just created. That's perfect. It's my red iPads. It's going to be done automatically, and we're good. So what I'll do is I click Save and Publish. It's going to show me a list of all the iPads that are going to get these changes. In this case, it shows, I did it to my red iPad group, which only has one iPad in it. So it's showing me that that's the iPad in the group that's going to get it. Cool. And then I click Publish. And then what should happen is my iPad should get it, hopefully relatively quickly. Sometimes it's just a matter of waking it up. So AirWatch is entirely based on the network. So sometimes apps don't fire off right away because, as you saw when we were looking at the device list, it said like last seen for the devices. That last seen value means when it was last talking to AirWatch. So if it's a few minutes, it just means it hasn't spoken to AirWatch in a while. So what I can do is I don't see it deploying right away. Sometimes literally just going to the internet and trying to open a web page just to wake it up usually kicks off this process. What I'll do is just because I don't want to wait here for it to come in, I'll watch it, and as soon as I see it deploying, I'll toggle back over. But that's the idea. It's entirely based on the network, and it's entirely based on when your iPads come online. So it can be a little bit, but generally speaking, it shouldn't take too long. They should get the configuration eventually, and you'll see in a moment whenever I do spot it, I will let you guys know. So that was deploying the Google Sheets app. And that was doing it automatically. The other option is I can do something or I can deploy an app on demand, which is that catalog. So at the beginning, let me see if I can find an app here. We'll do Gmail. So I'm going to use, oh no, I've already done Gmail. Explain everything. Okay, we're going to do explain everything. So if I click explain everything, I do the same thing I did before. I come in here, I do save and assign. And for explain everything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go add assignment like I did before. And I'm going to do add assignment again, this button here. Also, one thing here is that you can see it says create new smart group. I can actually create a smart group from here. Like it's just another quick window. So this is like the create smart group screen that we saw earlier. You can just do it from here. So it's just another way to get to the same feature, just a heads up. So like if at the last minute you're like, oh, I realized I don't have the group that I need, you can create one right away. But anyways, we already have our groups created, so that's fine. So I'm going to do select smart group. Before I did the red iPads, this time I'm going to do the iPads all group, which is here. Okay. And again, these columns here are seriously not working, but they should be on top of these three pillars here. And what I see here is that there are 6 iPads in my iPads all group. Yeah, I hear you guys got to get to class. That's great. If you have to get to class, that's totally fine. I'm basically done here, so I'm just going to wrap this up real quick. Thank you for attending, Christopher. I appreciate it. Hopefully you got what you need and you can come back and watch whatever you missed. But basically, so I have 6 iPads in this group. I'm now going to do the same thing I did before. I need to give this at least 6 or more. I have 500 licenses to work with. I'm going to go ahead and just put in 60. Why not? Let's shoot for the moon. And this time I'm going to switch to on demand. So with auto, it deployed it right away. With on demand, what it's going to do is it's going to put in the catalog. So everything's pretty much the same. I just, gave the same license count. I'm doing it to all my iPads and I chose on demand. I'm going to click save. I'm going to do save and publish again. And then it's going to show me all the iPads that are going to get it. In this case, before it had 6, now it's got all of them. I'm going to click publish again. And now what I should see is, unlike before, well, interestingly enough, it's still not on here, the Google Sheets. So that's taking its sweet time. But what happened with explain everything is that I chose it as on demand. And what on demand means is it's in the catalog. So if I go to the catalog, this is what I showed at the beginning of the webinar. And the catalog is basically a list of optional apps and apps that are already installed. So you can see here that there are some that are already installed, and then there are some that have buttons to install. When you choose on demand, what you're doing is you're saying that this app is optional. So explain everything. I now have it here with an option to install. Oops. Where is it? Explain everything. So I made it on demand. So I can actually tap install here, and what it'll do is it should force its way onto the iPad. Well, there's Google Sheets applying finally. Looks like I woke it up in the process. But yeah, so Google Sheets is done, and that was deployed automatically. It took a little bit, but it finally got here. And as you saw with Google Sheets, I didn't tap install for Google Sheets. I tapped install for Explain Everything. Google Sheets came on automatically, whereas Explain Everything isn't going to come down automatically. If I want Explain Everything on this iPad, I need to come into this catalog, click install again. It'll say your request install is received. We press the home button, and just down right here in the corner, it's now installing manually. So that's the idea. Auto will force it out to all your iPads, and on demand will put it in that catalog and give the user who holds the iPad the option to install it. Who should I have my principal? Yeah. So your principal can contact us at the help desk, and we'll help her out if she needs help adding an LAS. It's pretty straightforward. It takes like 2 minutes. So this is pretty much going to conclude it. So I deployed the app automatically, and then I deployed the app on demand in the catalog. Last thing I'm going to show is just undoing those changes. So let's say, for example, I just deployed Google Sheets to my iPad. It's there, and now I want to get rid of it. We just undo our changes. So we go back into Google Sheets. We go to Save and Assign. Now, before in here, we came in and we added an assignment, right? But now what we're going to do is we're going to select the one that we have, which is this red iPad assignment, and we're going to delete it. And we're going to click Save. So what that's going to do is it's going to undo everything we just did. It's going to say all the iPads that had it before are now we're going to pull it off. So whereas before I had an assignment, I now removed it. If I go to Save and Publish, that screen that shows you, hey, by the way, these are the iPads that are going to get it, is now showing, say, hey, by the way, these are the iPads that are going to have it removed. And we can see that status right here. It'll say this one's going to have it removed. So we press Publish, and what we should see when we come back over to our iPad, here's the iPad now. That Google Sheets should disappear, just like that. So we undid the changes, right? So that's it. That's pretty much what you need to know as far as kicking off your experience with AirWatch. I recommend taking a look at the knowledge base. It will show you everything I taught today and in more detail, not as rushed. As you can tell, I'm kind of speaking a lot faster because we are 20 minutes over, and I'm very, 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 very sorry. If you guys need to go, I greatly appreciate you coming. But that was the concept, okay? So you get your iPads into AirWatch, you rename them, you group them, and then you apply apps to the groups. If you wish to remove the app, you delete the app the app assignment, basically. You undo it and remove it, right? If you have any questions, please feel free to chat them out in the chat room. I don't have any problem staying behind to go into more detail. So if you do have a question or something wasn't clear, please feel free. But the reason I'm rushing is just because I know a lot of you guys end up having to go back to class, and I want to be cognizant of your time. Just so you guys know that this is actually the last webinar that we're probably going to be doing for the school year. I think we're actually going to take this and chunk it down into individual videos so that it's a little bit more digestible and you don't have to take all this time out of your day. We're probably going to try to be working on a few more videos for other things as well during the summer, just to make our experience or engaging with you guys a lot easier, and not having boring line documentation. So having these videos kind of, yeah. So we're basically, yeah. Okay, all right, well, I hope that makes sense. So it looks like you got to run. That's totally fine. So if there's no questions, I will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you again for attending. If you have any difficulties or you have any questions or feedback, you can feel free to contact us at the client service desk. Our number is 416-395-HELP or 4357. We are option 5. We are open from 7:30 a.m. till 5? Yeah, 7:30 a.m. till 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. Just give us a call. I work there, so you can even ask for me. Just say, hey, can I talk to Brandon? And we can do the webinar again. I'll do it with you over the phone. Why not? Let me know. So thank you very much for attending. That's pretty much it for the year. And hopefully we'll have some better content for you for the next school opening. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer if I don't see or hear from you. Take care. Bye-bye.